need to help ensure the notion that odds, no matter how dire they might seem, don't mean that life is over. And for every day that one lives, there's a reason to live. Caring for someone is just as important as caring about someone. And one can't be achieved without the other. So I live my life at an interesting nexus between someone who studies disability, stem cell research, health policy, and medical ethics, and someone who experiences these concepts all too personally. When I teach or write or research in any of these areas, I can't help to see manifestations of my own life in the work that I do. In many ways, I sit at the fulcrum of the patient, the person, and the professor. 24 years ago, I don't think I could have ever anticipated this. I don't think I could have imagined teaching the complexity of end-of-life decisions when my family was so close to having to make them. I don't think I could have ever anticipated teaching students about the struggles of securing healthcare coverage that they need when I had taken on these very same struggles myself. And I don't think I could have expected writing articles about advances in stem cell science when this science stands to change my life in such profound ways. And in some ways, I view this as both a privilege and a responsibility. There's no more influential background one can acquire in medical ethics than having lived through some of its most challenging questions. There's no fuller understanding one can obtain about the importance of biomedical research than to be someone who can benefit from it. And there are very few who can properly assess the value of hope more than someone who has built her future on it. In the translation of these ideas from my life to the classroom has in no way been lost on my students. What's been so rewarding and so professionally satisfying is that not only have my students seen the relevance of my life to what they're learning about, but also the relevance of my life to their own lives. When my students look at me, among other things, they see someone who is physically paralyzed. The injury to my body keeps me motionless, unable to move without the help of others. It's only with the dedication of those around me that I've been able to experience life beyond the condition that I face. It's only by way of the work that others do that my paralysis becomes not the totality of my existence, but only a part. Yet the paralysis that I face can be used as a reminder of the many types of paralysis that can seize any of our lives at any time and can prevent people from breaking free from the ties that might bind them. There is paralysis of the spirit, which can leave people discouraged in the face of obstacles and powerless to make necessary changes in our lives. There's paralysis of the mind, which can leave us ignorant to new ways of understanding people and the nature of their conditions. And there's paralysis of the heart, manifested in fear and uncertainty, which can keep us stagnant despite all that needs to be done. And all of these, each in its own way, can tie us to a set of conditions from which it can seem immensely difficult to free ourselves. And all of these can take place within our lives at any time, but that's not where the story ends. And what I try to convey to my students is that what's taken place for me can take place for all of us in unique ways, irrespective of what side of the hospital bed we might be on. Through different conditions or circumstances, whether they're physical, emotional, familial, or occupational, we all will feel like we're prevented from doing something or doing all that we can. But each one of us can make a commitment each day to live our lives with hope and to not be afraid to seize opportunities in front of us and make a difference. It's It's so often a matter of realizing that we can and always do have an effect on what takes place around us, that we can accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves if we try, and that fear, when it takes hold, is so much more disabling than the events that might transpire in our lives. And when we fail to embrace hope in our lives, it not only limits what we do ourselves, but also how we interact with others. Because what limits us individually ultimately limits us collectively. And what makes each day so important is the knowledge that despite the situation we might face, we can always contribute to something bigger than ourselves. This is what I convey to my students, many of whom will be entering the very fields in which you all currently reside, and will be building on the framework that all of you have established. This is what I convey to my students, but I dare say that it has relevance to you as well, as I know how important people like you are to people like me. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the session, 24 years ago, I was in the hospital, clinging to life while my family prayed that I would get to see that life. And much has changed in these past 2 decades. And people like all of you have played no small role in realizing that change. All of you here today represent a critical nexus between the science that takes place in laboratories and the lives of people who might benefit from that science. There are very few people who fit those characteristics, who can bridge the chasm between science and what people ultimately understand about it. Because there's often really a true failure to understand how intimately the laboratory and the future are connected. There's often a misunderstanding about what we as a society should feel are worthy endeavors to which to dedicate our collective resources. In the age of sequestration, dwindling state budgets, and demands on our attention, it's easy to see a social divide widen. And it's just as easy to become disheartened about the value that's placed on the work in which all of you are engaged. But it's events like this that right that imbalance. It's events like this that serve as a reminder about why we do the work that we do, and the ways in which we give of ourselves for the benefit of another. And this is something that none of us should take for granted, especially all of you who will come to mean so much to so many. So for as long as I'm able, I'll continue to fight for the causes in which I've invested my time and my life and believe so strongly. The work is challenging, but not nearly as challenging as the difficulties that so many people face in their lives every day. And it's these people who I keep in mind. It's these people who are the true inspirations, and it is these people who will ultimately gain their own inspiration from the work that all of you are doing. This is hard work, but it's also our work. It is among some of the most important work that can be done. And when we bring to the level of public attention the experiences of those whose stories too often go unheard, we're all better for it. So right now, there's no available cure for the physical paralysis that I face. You here today have the opportunity not only to help provide the cure, but also to be the cure for many of the different kinds and conditions that grip the world today. You have the ability and responsibility to use your talents to help eliminate fear, dispel discouragement, perpetuate progress, and promote potential in all different ways. And this is true both for the limitations you might find existing within yourselves, as well as the limitations you see existing in those with whom you work every day and to whom you've dedicated your life. So I hold out hope that one day soon there'll be a cure for the physical paralysis that I face, and that I'll be able to stand up once again it's the work that all of you do every day that makes that hope ever more a reality. But what holds true for me also holds true for people everywhere who face some sort of limitation. Whether or not you know it, all of you here today have been given the chance to help others stand and realize their potential in some very important way, in manners both literal and metaphorical. So the challenges that we as individuals and as a society face are complex, sometimes even undefined. The work needed to eradicate all forms of paralysis is written in the very ways that we care for and about each other. As for the paralysis of the spirit, there's a potential for hope. For paralysis of the mind, there's understanding. And for paralysis of the heart, there's love. So again, my most sincere gratitude to all of you here tonight. Thank you for this evening.
Dr. Ellison.
I'm so pleased that we have an award for you, the Kessler Foundation Neurorehabilitation Award. I'm so glad that you're here tonight.
Thank you. The pleasure is truly all mine. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, Dr. Ellison, will you be with us for a little while longer?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent. So we're going to let folks absorb the very powerful message we've heard. We're here. Enjoy the rest of your desserts. Come up and chat with her because this is an amazing evening. Thank you all for sharing it with us.